coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is good there, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river.
Hello everybody and welcome to the By the Minute Arsenal podcast. I am Matt H. With me is Matt V. Hello Matt.
Afternoon. Another couple of wins to report on, I guess, and not a hugely eventful week, but we're ticking along.
Ticking along is exactly right. Yes, Pete is not able to be with us this week. He will be back, I hope, as we will, after the international break. He has, of course, most importantly, submitted his predictions for the Watford game, but we'll come to that in a bit. Yeah, so, as Matt's alluded to, another 2 wins for Arsenal this week, taking our unbeaten run now to, I can't know if it's 6 or 7 now. I think 7, I'm getting overexcited. I think it's 6. At Brighton at the weekend, but before that, and that's where we'll start with Bate Borisov in the I was going to say Champions League then, force of habit. Let's draw a veil over that. In the Europa League, Arsenal went to Belarus, and it certainly had some eventful moments in this game. 1-4-2, as we expected. It was a bit of a mix and match in terms of the team. Let's start with that then. So. Matt, any thoughts particularly? I mean, Wilkshire started as was perhaps expected. Giroud started, Mertesacker captain, but Ospina in goal. There wasn't anything hugely surprising in the team, I don't think.
No, it's probably pretty much as we expected. Good to see Wilshere in a more attacking role, I guess. I don't think, apart from Akpom, I don't think I knew a single player on the bench. I think there were 5 18-year-olds. So
5 18-year-olds. Yes, I had that written down somewhere. Yeah, it was quite a young bench to say the least.
Just assume before the plane took off, Wenger was going around the training ground seeing who was in that day. There was only some youth players, so he invited them along.
Well, why not? And it didn't do any harm, as it turned out. Well, excuse me. Let's get into the details then. Walcott opened the scoring after 9 minutes. A lovely bit of interplay with Wilkshire to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, Wilshere was really, really good. Walcott took his chance well, and it was good to see those moves, which are sort of typical Wilshere moves, I guess. He sort of drives at the defence, and then they have their one-touch interplay around the box, and that was a great ball across the goal. And I think that was important because, in a game like this, away, their fans are always going to be up for it. So an early goal like that, and as we sort of just established dominance, quietened the atmosphere, and really settled us into the game well.
We did. Apologies for my coughing. Hopefully that's it. Though that's not as much of a howler as led to our second goal, which the goalkeeper, Sherbitsky, may be saying that correctly, really helped us out with a pass pretty much straight back to Walcott, who managed to finish it off.
I don't know what he was doing. I mean, it literally looked like that was what he was trying to do, because he wasn't trying to just clear it. He placed it quite particularly straight to Walcott, and it was a decent finish. But yeah, truly horrendous goalkeeping, and I'm not entirely sure what he was attempting at all.
No, and then just a couple of minutes later, Holding managed to grab the third with, again, some poor defending from a corner. And that, all looking pretty good, 3-0 up after 25 minutes. It very, very healthy. But Arsenal being Arsenal, of course, we only had 2 minutes to enjoy that before Ivanic scored for the Bate's first goal. Possibly, and don't let anyone take this the wrong way, my favourite goal of the night. There was something I quite liked about the header. Something about those headers when you just sort of seemed to meet it just at head height rather than jumping or diving. I don't know, I found it got straight into the corner past Ospina. Some people, I think, have said Ospina could have done a bit better. I think that might be a little harsh, but 3-1 then, before at half time, wasn't quite as comfortable as it could have been.
No, even when we're 3-0 up, I don't feel particularly comfortable. I don't think it was particularly Ospina's fault. We came in pretty quickly, didn't have a lot of time to react. Wasn't the best defending. They had a lot of space. Then straight after they scored, they had a little period where it looked like they were really going to put us under pressure. But we eventually got the ball back and sort of slowed it down and got to half time easily enough. Probably a lot more comfortable first half than we could have expected. Especially, we weren't playing our strongest team. Could have been quite a difficult game.
It was, and the second half was more even, but the first half, particularly those first 25 minutes, It's a bit obvious to say this given the score at that point, but we looked very good, very smooth considering all the changes. Wiltshire, seemed to be pulling strings. There was a lot to be positive about there, I thought, which was good news. And things got better in the second half initially when we got, should we say, a soft penalty? Would that be a fair description of it?
Very generous, very generous. Yeah, I'm not even sure. Was it on Mustafi?
I think it was a shirt pull, wasn't it? Which was, I mean, yes, there was a shirt pull there, but the amount of times you don't see those given, you really don't expect it to lead to a penalty.
When full Mike Dean decided to prove a point, can't touch anyone's shirt, and then the debate, I guess, was whether Walcott wanted his hat-trick or Giroud wanted his 100th goal more.
Yeah, and we ended up going the Giroud way, and there was his 100 goals. Makes him the 19th player to score that many, and he's done it. I think I read a couple of games quicker than Van Persie, and it's worth just reflecting just for a second on Giroud, because you take it for granted really when he's been there sort of 5 years now, but it's pretty impressive stuff, isn't it? Really, to get to that milestone so relatively quickly.
Yeah, he was obviously our first choice striker for a couple of years, but recently, this season and quite a lot of last season, he's mainly been coming off the bench, and he's still scored a fair few goals doing that. So he's been a really important player for us, who I think, has probably got a lot of criticism over the few years, which he probably doesn't deserve, because he's a really important player, both when he started for us, but particularly now when he is coming off the bench.
Yeah, it's a good point about the fact he's just gotten the maintenance. As far as we can tell, seems to have just got on with it, which is which is good to see. So there we are, 4-1 up. Didn't last that long. Borisov scored to make it 4-2 with sort of half the second half left. To say they were better in the second half anyway. There's a certain nerviness, of course, but when you've got a 2-goal lead, you don't, you can relax maybe a tiny bit more than if it was just the one. And ultimately, Arsenal got through and took the 3 points. We did make a couple of late substitutions, but it's interesting that that it was only sort of 10 minutes and 1 minute, and I think we were limited by that 2-goal lead. I think maybe there was a little bit of nerves, maybe more than there really needed to be in hindsight. But taking the 18-year-olds, but not actually using them. Or not using all of them at least, but or 3 of them. But I don't know. I very, very, very picky to be sort of negative on that. I just think it's given the team it was. I think you'd expect them all to. It was a good performance, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And you didn't need to make the changes. I think with just those few minutes left. Little nervy then, but ultimately okay. Any other thoughts on the match performance? Any individual performances, anything like that?
I think Wilshere. I thought Wilshere was really, really good, controlling the game. To be honest, I almost got caught out by the match. I didn't realise the Europa League strayed from its terrible 8:05 kickoffs and went at 6 o'clock.
Yes, and I believe the next one is also our next one is also at 6 o'clock. So yeah, you have to keep an eye out for that.
There is literally no time of the day now that is safe. We can play at any hour.
We can. It's quite incredible the number of different kickoff times there are now, and I mean 6 o'clock actually for me was, I have to say, reasonably civilised. But I can make sure I'm in front of a telly for them, but not everyone can do that. So there is that limitation. But I must admit, I'm not sure what time it would have been in Belarus. I'm guessing they're 2 hours ahead at least. So yeah. Probably quite a nice time for them. The only other comments I had on the game was Arsene Wenger got the pink lining out again. I noticed. So I don't know if this is just the Europa League, because I can't remember actually which game it was before, but there was one point where the camera was on him, and there it was, that very bright lining.
Yeah, that was the Cologne game. So this is clearly the Europa League special. I
can imagine him being sort of quietly superstitious about things. Maybe this is it. Maybe he's starting with this, which is quite a thought. And the second thing is, a lot of the Bate team seem to be lifelong Arsenal fans. It seemed every time a guy was going to come on or go off or take a free kick, it was, oh, so-and-so, he's a lifelong Arsenal fan, which is lovely. But to me, it was almost as if the commentators didn't have anything else they could say about them. But perhaps I'm being a bit cynical.
It was very strange. John Hartson was on co-commentary. He seemed very excited by it all, clearly not used to getting the opportunity to leave the studio.
He does. He's on the radio sometimes.
Yeah.
But again, that might be a relatively new thing as well. So yeah, I quite like the bit of enthusiasm. I'm not sure there's a huge amount of knowledge on there. There was a bit of self-deprecation I seem to remember as well. I can't remember the details now, but yeah, he seems like a perfectly. It makes a change for one thing.
Yeah.
You get now people the powers that be across all the television and radio networks seem to think we want Robbie Savage on pretty much 24 hours, which I can't really imagine anyone, even his close friends and family would want that. But it didn't used to be. I'm going to sound old now. It didn't used to be the case. It used to be you had people on BBC or people on ITV and then people on Sky or people on the radio, and now there seems to be this big mix and match between all of them. And I'm not convinced that's an improvement, shall we say.
Ian Wright is on everything.
Yeah, there you go. It's another example.
For the day. Yeah, he does Match of the Day, and then he'll be on BT doing something, and then he'll be on ITV doing some highlights. He's clearly raking it in.
He must be doing all right. Yeah, well, not that we're ones to criticise Ian Wright, but the principle as a whole of having the same people on everything is not necessarily what people want. Might want a bit of difference. Anyway. Europa League then put to bed for a few weeks. Excellent start, of course. We have 2 wins in that, so we are very much top of the group. And if I remember rightly, Cologne lost in the game against Red Star at home, didn't they? So they are rock bottom with no points. So we're in a pretty strong position with the 2 Red Star games coming up. So then we move from that to our third game of a fairly congested week and here we go, talking of kick-off times, midday on Sunday. We played Brighton at home and we won 2-0, and that's the overall picture. Let's have a look at some details then. So not a particularly spectacular game, fairly solid performance. Brighton were not particularly ambitious, which I don't think we can blame them hugely for, but even after we scored they didn't really seem to go for it. But team news then: Holding was in, Koscielny injured, if I'm remembering that correctly. Mm-hmm. Ramsey and Xhaka in the centre of midfield, with Lacazette starting instead of Giroud, as I think we're probably going to get used to, and Iwobi starting along with Alexis. Ozil still out injured. Not really any surprises really in that team, were there?
No, all made sense. Ozil's injury seems to be going on for a while, which has allowed the papers to increasingly focus on a potential move to Man United for him. I have no idea if there's any truth in that at all, but I imagine he's not going to be faking an injury unless we see him turn out for Germany twice this international break. Then suspicions may arise. But no, the team was as expected. We're starting to get a pretty settled team now, which is good. And yeah, it was good to have a bench where I knew some of the players.
Exactly. Always good to recognise the people on the bench. Wiltshire on the bench, of course, and Walcott, who came on a bit later on, along with El Neni and Giroud. Well, let's go back to the start of the game then. Pretty early on, a pretty impressive shot from Lacazette. He's shown a couple of times now he's got some power, and he had one here early on that smashed off the post. Yeah,
woke everyone up. It was a great effort, actually. Really unlucky not to score. And we probably don't have enough of that. Players shooting from range, but it looks like whenever he's vaguely in sight of the goal, he is going to have a go. And yeah, that's good to see. It's nice to see the confidence, isn't it, to be able to sort of take those on. And perhaps that's a sign of him settling into the team, and that he's willing to have a go at that pretty early on. But it was not the traditional source that opened the scoring. 17 minutes, Monreal, I thought rather nicely actually. Bit of bobbling ball in the box, but he managed to control it on his chest and sort of volley it home. It was nicely done, and he seemed pretty pleased with his. I think, I may have this wrong, but I think it was only his second goal for Arsenal, his second league goal for Arsenal, perhaps. Yeah, and the first one in the Emirates, I think. It was a good finish with his right foot. It was a bit of a messy goal, as everyone had a go, and it eventually fell to him. And special mention to Alexis Sanchez, who, in trying to jump out of the way, also found himself clattered from both sides by Brighton players and ended up about 12 feet in the air. So it's a good effort from him to get out of the way. Well, I think Pete would have said in previous ones he's a bit fed up with Sanchez trying to be involved in everything, or trying to run everything. maybe that will appease him, when he got in the way there, and it turned out to be useful, even if he did suffer for his art, as it were. Yeah.
We looked on top in that first half. Pretty confident. I'd say Brighton weren't really offering much. They did hit the post themselves, though, didn't they? Although that was, I can't remember if that was first half or second half. I think it was towards the end of the first half, wasn't it? And then 0-0 at half time, and then Iwobi, after a lovely move, made it 2 with a killer back pass assist from Sanchez on the way.
Yeah, I thought Sanchez was excellent in the second half. I know I've seen quite a few people criticise him, which I guess fair enough, because he did seem increasingly unwilling to pass and try and do everything himself. But on that occasion, I mean, it was such a good back heel. He didn't even look, so I don't know how he's seen Iwobi there, taking out all of their defence, and a clinical finish from Iwobi, which was good to see.
It was, wasn't it? Now I've zoomed through the game a bit there. People will notice because I wasn't able to watch our first half hour because I had to make my way to Wembley, where I was indulging in a different form of football. So I've seen the goal and I've seen other bits. Is there anything else though you wanted to note about the overall performance? I mean, my only other comment really was just one of those games. You take the 3 points and move on, and nice to get to the international break with a few wins behind the team.
Yeah, it was a pretty uneventful game. We passed. Brighton sat so deep, and we were just passing side to side for most of it, pretty slowly without any real pressure. We didn't really try and push on to score more. We sort of just saw it out easily enough. Apart from Sanchez, who was on a one-man crusade to score, and he came close to doing so. Giroud came on, and I mean, that sort of slowed us down even more. I think Giroud, when he comes off the bench, is at his best when we're looking for a goal. The other team sort of pin back and we're crossing balls into the box and we're really pushing. But in games like this where we're sort of passing it around the back and there's no urgency, he's pretty anonymous. So, probably might have been better keeping Lacazette on, but he was protected and taken off once again. But yeah, I mean, there was a few nervy minutes at the end when we were sort of camped and Brighton were pushing, but no, it was a pretty easy 3 points in the end, and not the greatest game in the world to watch.
No, not at all. Well, let's not go on about it anymore then, because we don't need to. I mean, there was one comment I seem to remember. One of the commentators, it might have been on the radio and I was listening, or on the television, sort of saying, "Oh, the crowd aren't very sort of excited about this." Well, A, it wasn't a great game, but B, it's 12 o'clock. There's a number of people with hangovers, a number of people who are just still not sure what they're doing on a Sunday morning. The commentators are making a joke, oh, of course, I can say good morning, that kind of stuff. That's because you've moved the game, you've moved the game to a daft time. But there we are. Football doesn't necessarily have great self-awareness at times, and that might have been one of the examples. Okay, well, look, we'll leave that game there. Oh, did you have anything else you were going to say on that?
No, just agreeing with what you said, for sure.
I'm more than happy to have that kind of thing go on. Plenty of agreements, good. I mean, around very quickly, the rest of the Premier League in terms of our rivals, if we like, for the top half of the table, should we say. Very comfortable win for Spurs and Man United in their games. Chelsea, of course, lost to an impressive Man City. We only managed to score the one this week, but that was enough. And then Liverpool drew away at Newcastle. And we'll mention Everton losing at home to Burnley, because they are the current crisis club, it seems, in the Premier League. All of which puts us in a nice 5th place after 7 games. I say nice, it could obviously be much better, but it could have been worse after the start we had. So 13 points, 7 games, for 6 points off the leaders, the two Manchester clubs, but we're only a point behind Spurs, level on points with Chelsea. It's not a terrible foundation.
No, especially considering where we were at the last international break. If you'd have said we'd be ahead of Liverpool after that debacle, people probably wouldn't have expected that. So we've rebuilt quietly, ticking along. I think our first game back afterwards is Watford, but then we do have some harder games to come, like Everton. I'm sure will help them back into form. And then on the horizon, back-to-back games with City and Spurs. So
we do, yes.
Yeah. And that seems to be conveniently in November, so the annual collapse could yet still be possible.
I'm just looking there, though. They are back-to-back, but in between is, I think, another international break.
Okay.
For the playoffs and what have you. So we have a certain respite between the two of them, although that may not be any fun at all, as you could lead to. We're away at Man City and at home to Spurs, and before that we played Belgrade twice. We do get an easier game, if I may say so, against Swansea and Norwich in the Carling Cup, or the League Cup. But yeah, certainly some challenging stuff, and yes, just what we don't need in November. I'm going to cheat and look ahead to what we have in November. After that, we have Cologne and Burnley away, and Huddersfield at home are our other November games. So it doesn't matter who we're playing. We can obviously have a chance of losing points against anyone in November, or indeed any other month, to be frank. I was going to very quickly mention the furore, and it actually fits in with a couple of things we've said already this week about the potential Christmas Eve game. Sky want to move our game against Liverpool to, I think, well, Christmas Eve and possibly midday. Now, I haven't seen any news about this recently, so I don't know if it's still possibly going to happen. I know Liverpool fans aren't particularly happy about this. I wouldn't be particularly happy about this as a home or away fan for this one. Any views on a Sunday, Christmas Eve, midday kick-off against Liverpool?
It's just getting worse and worse. I think it started with 4 p.m. on Sunday until someone pointed out that there'd be no trains for Liverpool fans to get back, and they accepted that might be a bit of a problem. So yeah, move it then to midday. It's like they're under the impression that because it's Christmas, we'll just play whenever we want. Doesn't matter time or date. It would be nice to have some structure to when teams are playing, especially, playing on Christmas Eve. Most teams then have to play again on Boxing Day, and then again 2 or 3 days later. So we don't need the schedule even more cramped up. So that's from a footballing perspective. But as you said, from fans, for Arsenal fans it would be bad enough. But yeah, Liverpool fans having to make that trek on Christmas Eve, I can understand their frustration.
It's a joke, really, that this is happening. I seem to remember reading somewhere this year there's even more games than normal. There's an extra set of fixtures crammed into that sort of Christmas New Year period before you even get to the Cup, because of the way the days work, and yes, because of television effects. So yeah, it just seems ridiculous to me. I can't, for the sake, play it. There's lots of other times you could play that game if you want to put it on the telly that wouldn't inconveniences people, but it wouldn't inconvenience people as much. So
yeah.
Be interesting to see what happens then. I have a feeling it's still going to happen then. Actually, whether it's a good idea. Well, we know it's not a good idea, but I have a feeling it's going to happen then anyway. I think television just has its power, and to be the devil's advocate, television have paid a lot of money. Fair enough. The problem here is the clubs selling themselves for this. It's the clubs who are not thinking about the fans as much as the television. But there we go. I won't go on about that. Something I'll mention, and Matt, I haven't actually mentioned this to you. I don't know if you have any interest in this. Do you have any interest at all in the kind of financial side of the Arsenal, or indeed any club, but particularly Arsenal? The yearly figures, all that kind of stuff that comes out around this time of year.
I do, yeah. I haven't seen anything there.
Well, I was going to just recommend to people who are interested. They came out just a day or two ago, I think, maybe not even that long. There's a guy on Twitter called Swiss Ramble, SWISSRAMBLE, and he does a really nice job, I think, of looking at the results and comparing them against everyone else, and it's my particular kind of thing. I like that stuff anyway. I just like to mention it in case people hadn't come across it. It's really good. It all looks pretty healthy, but we sort of knew that anyway. We've got a lot of debt, but it's being paid off in a good way. Our turnover of what's the thing? The wages to turnover ratio is really good. It's only Man United who are better than that, but then only Man United have more debt than us. So all these things. I don't know. Have a look. There's lots of stuff there if you're interested in this kind of stuff. To you and to anyone else who's listening who's interested. Right. Let's move on then. An international break is coming up, but we don't get to the international break until we've gone through the predictions. Now, let's have a look. The Borisov game, I exchanged a text actually with Pete because he predicted 4-1, which we did mock slightly.
Yes, we did.
But of course, for a few minutes at least, he was actually right on the money. Didn't work out in the end. You get a point as well because you said it would be an Arsenal win. I chickened out and said it would only be a draw. So I don't get any points for that. Brighton, we all got a point, but none of us got the right result. So the table at the moment sees you, Matt, with 10 points. Pete has now broken away from me with 7, and I'm stuck on 6. So still a long way to go, of course. We have the international break coming up. Before that, though, we have... not before that, sorry, but we will come back to do this after the first game back, if you see what I mean. So I would need from you, Matt, if I may, a prediction on our game for that Saturday. So that is away at Watford, a line, if you like, and a score prediction, please.
Yeah, I actually think this will be quite a tough game. Watford have been good this season. under new manager. I think they're only a point behind us, so they're doing very well. Although I seem to have in my head that we have a pretty good record against them away from home. It seems to be usually a comfortable win, but I can see this one being difficult. But I will go for 2-1 Arsenal, which even seems negative considering our sensational defence at the moment, which nothing can get past.
Well, that's very interesting. Pete has gone for a 3-1. He let me have his prediction earlier. I don't have any reasoning for that from him, but I've gone for 2-0, so same kind of margin. My reasoning is that yes, Watford have done well, but I'm sort of thinking that we've looked pretty good recently. I'm hoping that after the international break that the team's feeling nice and refreshed and ready to go for it. And Watford did have that big reverse against Man City, didn't they? If I've got getting my team right. Yeah. So I'm sort of perhaps looking at that as a something to be hopeful for Arsenal. So and yeah, I just think we're on a decent run. All those games unbeaten, none of them particularly spectacular, but we're doing the job. You know, if we can play like we did against Chelsea, for example, where actually we took a few minutes to get into it, but then looked very comfortable. I think, with all due respect to Watford, I think we should be able to, like the Brighton game, really come out with a reasonably positive result. So that's my theory for a 2-0 prediction.
Perfect.
Well, I would certainly take it if that's the way it worked out. All right then. Well, look, we'll finish there. We've got the international break, so we will be back hopefully on the 16th of October-ish, depending on the availability of Matt and Pete, and hopefully we can all get together then. But until then, thank you very much, Matt, and thank you for enjoy your international break.
Oh, I will do. Hopefully we make it through the international break unscathed, and so do the players. Probably the players more importantly.
Just about. Of course, I should have said that, of course, yes. It's all very well having the international break, thinking it might be a chance to recharge batteries a little bit, but not if they come back broken and bruised, as quite often has been the case in the past. Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you very much for listening, everyone, and we will speak to you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, bye-bye.